Everyone, welcome to the people who are joining us. We want to know in the chat, what's your least favorite part of working in HR? No music jams today. I can't get Spotify to work. It's very annoying. If anyone knows how. I also recently did an iOS update, and truthfully, I did not know what I was missing out on, and now I'm confused on how to use my own phone. I don't know if anyone had the same experience, but I literally was like, what is this? We will just mute everyone coming in. Make sure you are muted. Oh, here we go. We're getting some good answers in the chat. Someone said party planning. That's low-key one of my favorite parts of working. Someone said
complaint department. I hear that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, we're overhead. Someone just said that, and I also feel the same way.
Yes.
Complaint. I'm just getting ahead. What is happening? Out-of-date systems. These are awesome. I knew people were going to have responses to this. Being the Toby of the Office, whoever said that,
was great.
You know my soul. Toby is the villain of The Office. I want to be very clear. He is the villain.
And isolation. Yes, I feel that too. Because who do we vent to? No one. Hence why HR therapy is so great.
I feel so lonely sometimes. CEOs who think they are people first.
Who think they are, but are not. Yes, all the time.
I love that. Not getting enough budget is also true. I'm always like, can I have more?
Am I in the right room? Someone said. Am I in the right room?
Yeah. Remote manager hiring at the company. Oh, good point. These are good. Oh yeah. Candidates telling you exactly what they want salary-wise. And then they ask for more.
Someone said you get a budget. LOL.
Yeah. Wow, this is good. Good. Sorry for
what budget. Yeah.
I really cannot figure out my Spotify. Oh, these are getting so good. I can't wait to dive into this. Okay, we have more people joining us. I think we'll give everyone like 60 more seconds, and then we will start 3 minutes after our expected start time. But we're having such good conversation in the chat.
Yes, when they don't need advice, and then they don't listen to you. And then when they come back to you and ask you to fix the problem that you told them how to fix to begin with, but they didn't listen to. Yeah.
I think so. I don't have children, but I really do feel like HR is a lot of parental abilities. I'm learning a lot of parental abilities of like patience and having to say the same thing 15 times in a row.
Or active listening. It's like, please listen to me actively.
Someone wrote HR is adult daycare.
Yes. Yes. Sometimes the executives are the worst children.
Yes. Oh my God, this is amazing. Someone said they think their 8-year-old kid is okay. We're gonna have to dive in. This is getting too juicy, and I could honestly spend the full hour just listening to you all's chat or rereading this chat. So I'll jump in. Welcome to HR Therapy. We're going to talk about the talent world today. I'm so excited. I'm joined by a wonderful cast and crew of guests who I will introduce shortly. Quick shout out to my sponsors, Newsstand and the Predictive Index. Without them, I would not be able to get my friends together and essentially shit talk all the things we're dealing with in HR. So Newsstand and PI, thank you so much. I appreciate them dearly for giving me this opportunity. Diving in before we get into all the good stuff and the good conversation. I'm like so excited. I'm moving too fast. This is being recorded. We won't share any identifying data from the chat. Don't worry. Just want to make sure you all know it's being recorded. The chat is distracting. It's very lit. This is going to happen the whole time. If you don't like it, just minimize it. I'm sorry in advance. It is distracting. And then there's a notes document that someone from Workweek is going to drop right there. It's going to cover the 5 questions that we are talking through as our main segment today, and then we'll pop to live questions. And it's just a document that you can use to keep track of all the wonderful things we're going to say, or possibly the one-liners I will drop throughout this conversation. So without further ado, what we're doing while you're all here, we're going to meet the cast, these lovely people that you're seeing right here. We're going to do our main portion of the event called Dear Hebba and Friends. We'll take a live Q&A, and then we'll chat a little bit about what's next. So without further ado, here are my cast and crew for today. Anessa, I'll start with you if you want to introduce yourself to everyone.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. So I think Hebba, was I your first HR therapy guest when we started?
I think you were like my second or third,
maybe
honestly.
Second. Okay, yeah.
But here you are ending a season, which is
nice. So rounding it back out. And I am the CEO and founder of Bike & Co. And basically what we do is if you were saying hi in the chat, we have a small group of wonderful people who really come in and help support people teams, HR teams, talent teams in times of transition. So whether that is we are the first chief people officers in the door, we come in to help a company during a time of transition or transformation in an interim capacity, such as head of or VP, what have you. And we help companies grow, scale, pivot, mergers and acquisitions, all of the above. Even sometimes if there's a CPO that's going out on a leave, right? We'll come in and help to stabilize and keep working on the things they want to keep working on while they're out. So we worked with over 100 companies around the world. I've pretty much seen it all from seed stage through pre and post IPO. It is a fun, exciting thing, but I have seen lots of things. You
have seen some shit.
I have seen lots. I have lots of tea to spill. But yes, it's so excited to be here today again with Hebba.
Thank you, Anessa. Cassandra, you're up.
Hi, I'm Cassandra. I am a senior talent acquisition specialist. I'm currently at NPR. I've worked for the last 7 years in talent acquisition at various different companies, really large companies, 30,000 employees globally, all the way down to 60 people employees in one room. The CEO, there's beer on draft kind of vibes. So definitely have worked at different types of companies and kind of seen it all when it comes to talent. And so I'm excited to talk to everybody today.
I can't wait. We forgot to do fun facts. What do you like to do for fun?
Oh my gosh. Well, I have coffee in front of me, so I'm constantly trying new coffee shops and different pastries. That is a major point of my budget in which I refuse to eliminate.
We're both foodies.
We're both foodies. We talk about tasting menus all the time. So if you guys have tasting menus in DC or in other cities, let me know. I have a controversial opinion. I think LA has the best coffee. So a controversial opinion, but I love coffee in LA. And I'm also really big into calligraphy. And Anessa's seen my notes in my notebook.
Her bullet journal is amazing.
Yeah, I love writing. I'm very tactile. So
wow, I literally can't. I pick up a pen and I'm like, what? How do I do this? Like my handwriting is so bad.
Pens. It's an addiction. So
okay, so drop your pen recs in the chat. Thank you, Cassandra. Also huge foodie and coffee lover. Ree.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Ree Grant. I know Hebba from a past life because I am currently the recruiting manager at Lithic, really awesome payments-based fintech company. So Hebba and I worked there for some time. And in terms of my overall career, I started out in HR and people operations, but made a transition pretty early on into talent. Fell in love with the idea of equitable access and things such as that. So kind of just stayed and then made my official fintech transition right before the pandemic. And I kind of fell in love with startups. So the startup bug bit me, as they say. So really enjoying that and just owning the entire recruiting and talent process at Lithic right now. So I am talent for the time being as we continue to grow. And then fun fact, if I am trying to be honestly human, I would say just napping when I'm not doing a ton of volunteer work. But since I want to do a little bit better than that, I do some independent screenwriting in my outside of work life that I'm really excited about.
Ree is truly one of the funniest people I've ever worked with. We would have conversations where we would just be dying on the floor laughing because she's just so funny. I can't wait to read your screenplay someday. Please send it to me first, so I can say new one. My dream. Okay, so this is our brilliant cast and crew of characters today. We got some pen recommendations in the chat, and somebody else said Cassandra, LA has the best coffee. So this is I don't know if it's controversial.
It's right on brand.
I love this. Okay, so one quick overview before we dive in, a little bit about the state of talent. I think we're all on LinkedIn. We all read the news. We all know everything that's happening. On the left side, you'll see layoffs are continuing. I just wanted to put this note in there because I just saw the news about Facebook doing another 10,000 people in force reduction in force. I think a lot of companies have been open that maybe they did not cut deep enough the first time, so they're cutting in second and third rounds. Unemployment is back to pre-COVID rates. I honestly think in January, it was the lowest unemployment, was the lowest it had been since 1969. So that was a really interesting thing that I observed. And candidates are more vocal than ever about bad hiring practices. I truly like live for those posts on LinkedIn. But the other part of like the candidate experience is also what a lot of people in this audience, the recruiters, are also experiencing. And we're going to dive a little bit into that dynamic too in the Q&A. So on the right side, you'll see I love to put some stats in there. Unemployment is at 3.6%. Leisure and hospitality added the most amount of jobs in February. I actually just read the US State Department report this morning, and I thought that was really interesting. They also had a line in there about 4 out of 5 employers are reporting difficulty in finding talent. And so this is just like a very interesting time to be in the world that we are all in, because there are a lot of different things that are happening. Like we're coming back from the pandemic, unemployment rates are lower, we're seeing all the layoffs, but jobs are being added. And now we're hearing from employers, it's actually hard to find people. So why is that? So we're going to get into that a little bit deeper. Someone wrote total mixed signals. Yes, we're going to get into the live portion of our Q&A called Dear Hebba, Anessa, Cassandra, and Ree. All my friends are here today to hang out with me. And our first question we have is pretty spot on. What are you observing in the world of talent? Team?
Yeah, so I can actually take that because I think being in the tech industry, I have a really interesting view into this. I feel like tech is the loudest child right now, and that's where we're seeing all of the layoffs. And one thing that I am observing with all of the layoffs that are happening specifically in the arena of tech is salaries are resetting. And I know that can sound slightly negative. They're not underpaying anyone. We're not going back to like per se pre-COVID salaries, but we are kind of seeing a slow in terms of hiring managers doing the unicorn hunting. So they are more open to the idea that there's factors such as like business needs, budget, as well as capacity planning that play a role into not necessarily accepting that the candidate who is going to come at a really high ticket price. So that's something that I'm definitely observing.
Man, the wild, wild west of 2021 or 2020 is gone, I think, where candidates were throwing out numbers that truly would make my jaw drop. I'd be like, come again? You literally don't have a year of experience. You want to make how much? So that's also what I observed, Ree.
It's like the housing market where no one's not completely buying houses, but we're slowing down.
For sure.
I'm thinking me too when somebody would throw that salary out.
I'd like that. Down for it.
Oh my gosh. I'm observing so many more conversations of mine where people have been laid off or are going through a layoff. Every day I'm talking to somebody, whether they were in a tech role or in a non-tech role, where it wasn't as prevalent. I felt like a lot of candidates had a lot more, were spoiled for choice in the last couple of years with the employers. And not to say that they don't have other offers or aren't interviewing other places, but really have been affected by those cuts. And so that's been a lot of my conversations. I've also seen my applicant volume change. I'm not at a tech company right now. That's not our, that's a huge part of our work, but it's not our main, bread and butter of our positions. And so we used to really struggle with tech applicant volume prior to all of these layoffs. And now in the market, we are getting hundreds and hundreds of applications for roles, which has just been a really big shift for us.
That's so interesting. Do you think people are looking at public radio and thinking that's safer than tech right now?
I don't know, actually. I feel like there's been a lot of layoffs in media in general,
Mm-hmm.
and also with CNN and Bloomberg. I feel like every media company hasn't been immune. So, but maybe tech and that space has soured people a little bit. So looking at different industries.
Yeah.
And so what about you?
And I'll add to what Cassandra said about just, people might have multiple offers still, right? I'm still observing a lot of our clients having candidates with multiple offers, right? So even though the salaries aren't so high as they were, people still want to know that they're being valued for the work and the experience that they bring, right? And I think that especially with all of the pay transparency laws that are happening, all of the news that we see about pay transparency and how it's not really moving forward and staying the same and sometimes even going backwards, people still really want to feel like they're being compensated fairly. So they do probably have multiple offers still on the table. There are quite a few that have choices to make. And so at the end of the day, right, what are we observing in the world of talent? It still really matters what your candidate experience is like you mentioned, Hebba, right? Like there's still a ton of people putting out there just horror stories on LinkedIn about what they've experienced. And people will remember that, right? Just like a bad Yelp review, people will remember their negative experience far more than they're going to put out publicly about their positive experience. So still multiple offers, still taking care of candidates is really important. And just knowing that it is a weird market. So, in certain pockets, people still do have choices.
Yeah, I think I've observed all of that as well. And there's some interesting conversation in the chat about how people who have been laid off have severance package and then maybe they're not moving with as much urgency as they used to. And so that's, I think, really interesting to call out. And I also just think like in 2020 or 2021, safety was, I think, the last thing on a lot of people's minds. They were like, oh, this is great. We're going to ride this ride. We're going to make a bunch of money. It's going to be great. And now I think the tone that I have just been experiencing and talking to candidates is like, they want to know that they're going to be guaranteed safety. And ultimately, like I always say as HR people, we can never promise anything. But like candidates are asking questions like, how much runway do you have if it is a startup? Like, what are your operating expenses like? Are you predicted to run out of money? Because like raising venture capital in this current economy is a bit harder than it was in 2020 and 2021. Years that will go down in history in my mind is like the wild, wild west. Where I would call Ree during offers and just be like, I can't even believe this is a real offer I'm putting together. It's so out there. So I think there's a lot of us are observing a lot of the same things, which is why we're here today to talk more about the talent world. So our next question is like, what can help candidates stand out in this market? So we're seeing like a ton of applicant uptick. Cassandra, you mentioned like more than ever, we're getting a lot of people that are applying for jobs, but some people in the audience today might actually be candidates who are looking in this market. So what can help candidates stand out?
Yeah, I think that, Anessa and I have had these conversations too, where, we posted a role and we posted on Friday and by Monday had 800 applicants. And so it was like an overwhelming, amount of interest. And we didn't really even advertise it. It can be so disheartening to look on LinkedIn and Glassdoor and you're about to apply for a role and you see how you compare to 700 applicants. That to me is like such a like gut punch because I'm thinking, if I apply now, there's no way they're going to review my application. They're going to see the first maybe 100, maybe 200, and I'm so far down. And one of the things I really think about is that networking and referrals. I know that can have a lot of privilege associated with it to think, oh, how do I get someone who knows someone in that company to say my name, in those rooms. But I think that really rooting into the fundamentals of meeting, the minimum qualifications or exceeding the minimum qualifications in some spaces, and having a good resume. I think good candidates are still good candidates and are still going to get, that sort of attention at a company and stick out. But it's definitely a really challenging space to be in with this high applicant volume. We're not seeing the same kind of choices or the same amount of job openings that we saw a year ago, like you said, about just it being the Wild West. There were so many choices. You could go to almost any company last year. And now it's really, the job volume is lower. So I would say sticking to fundamentals of your resume and interviewing is really important.
I love that. The privilege piece, I just really resonates with me. It's something I think about all the time in recruiting and building recruiting processes is like, who are we granting the privilege of having a job here? And like only talking to referrals can lead to such a homogeneous, like they've shown that having referral programs actually has negative impacts on DEI. And so just thinking about that as it relates to the job market, when folks are being laid off, the connecting and the privilege piece of it, it really sits with me. I think about it quite a bit.
One of my first companies was like, give referrals white glove service. And I was like, okay, that's great, but like give everybody white glove service.
Yeah. And the other thing too is like a lot of people say, reach out to the CEO, reach out to the COO, which is like fine, right? But I think what is not out there publicly, and we as recruiters and in talent space and HR space know, is like that still actually has to go through the talent team, right? And how many of those messages do we get a day? 50, right? And it's like, okay, we have these 50 people, like you said, that may be sent to us because there's a sense of privilege there. And do we really want to compound on that privilege by making sure they get the first look, right? Or the first bits of our time when we have these amazing people in our applicant pool that may not know someone, or someone's dad might not know someone, right? And they're still just as great of a candidate. It just doesn't mean that they're in the circle we're in, and that's okay. And I know a ton of resume experts, a ton of career coaches say, just go reach out to somebody, but it still has to go through talent. Because I can tell you, the CEOs and the presidents and the COOs, they do not know how to access the ATS. They are not moving that person forward. It is going through the talent team. So like, yes, to referrals. I'm still big on like companies using referrals, but if referrals are more than 50% of your talent philosophy, you're doing it wrong, right? Like you've got to figure out how to cut down that bias and that privilege and really get to the amazing people out there in the market.
I love that. Lots of love for that in the chat. There's it's just interesting, like who even feels comfortable enough reaching out to the president and the CEO is also a thing to think about, because people of color and underrepresented groups apply for jobs differently. And so if they apply for jobs differently, you would assume they also do different types of outreach. And so it's like they might not have the confidence to reach out to a CEO to say, hey, give me a job. Whereas other people who historically in their life have had access to privilege and have been given that right to reach out do. And so there's like a bigger question there too, that like maybe someday we'll get to. I don't know. Bree, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely piggybacking off of what Anessa and Cassandra said. I think really kind of preparing candidates who may not have sponsorship presence to get a referral on how to kind of attack the market right now has been really helpful. Even with my mentees, I've created like the ABCs of your candidacy, and definitely focusing on applying early. There's lots of ATS systems that will actually send you emails as soon as a role is posted. I know LinkedIn also has that feature to just send you a notification as soon as a role is posted, so that you're not like applicant number 800. You're more so like at the front end of that, so you get the chance of having your resume seen. Also, another aspect of that, which would be B, is beat the ATS. ATS systems are like really interesting, honestly. You have your greenhouses that a recruiter would actually have to go in and look at your resume, versus like Workday, they don't even see your resume unless it goes through the system that's looking for keywords and titles and things such as that. So knowing really what the ATS looks like for the company that you're applying for and having a resume specific to those can be super helpful. And then the C of that would be curate your resume. If you're applying to multiple different roles with the same resume, I can tell you right now that it's probably not the best plan of attack. It can be super easy to go in and just kind of like blanket apply. But if you're not going in and at least curating your titles or changing keywords in the descriptions of what you're applying for, it's more so not any respect to your time, and you're not really getting that visibility from the recruiter. So I can say that like there's ways to avoid being just another resume in the sea of resumes in a really difficult time.
I love that you broke it down to the ABCs. That was amazing. Lots of love for that too. I will be thinking about that. I always tell people to carry like their resume to the job they're applying for. I think it's like one of the most powerful things you could do. It's also interesting. So it leads me into my next question, but like something I see candidates like when they really stand out in an interview process or even a resume is that they understand what the company is doing. And so like, as much as I'm trying to sell a candidate on working with me and our company, I'm also trying to hear like why they want to work at our company. And so it brings me to our next question, which is about some red flags you've observed during interviews. And this question is in here mostly because I've seen a lot of red flags during interviews. And I think like being mindful of them and hearing from people who recruit on a day-to-day basis will be helpful as job seekers are applying.
Yeah, so I actually have some really good insight into this. I can say is, in addition to not knowing much about the company, not knowing what you want as a candidate, I would like to think that I'm like a magician or a miracle worker as a recruiter, but I would have to say I cannot pick a path for you. And not really knowing kind of what you're looking for next is something that could really read like turnover or attrition to us as recruiters. So I would say even sometimes like candidates may know what they're looking for, but we'll use keywords like, oh, I'm open to anything, or I'm looking to learn. There's much better ways to say that in an interview, in terms of really highlighting your strengths and highlighting that us as a company would be a good fit for your next step, than kind of just looking for a blanket opportunity. Because our kind of number one red flag is we bring you in and you're looking for something that doesn't exist here, and then you turn over in less than a year. So that's really a flag for me when I hear that.
I love that. Candidate fit, not fit. We decided to stop using that word. Like, I think what the campaign is out on that one. But I love that you mentioned that, because turnover is so expensive to a company. Mm-hmm. And so really, if you're not thinking like, is this candidate the person who's going to stay with us, work through everything, and really thrive in this organization, you're looking at somebody who's just going to cost you time and money. Just tough.
Yeah, I think, there's so many red flags. It's so hard to pick sometimes how, what are some of the red flags you can observe. But gosh, the two that I think stick out to me the most are being too comfortable in an interview. I think that a lot of us talent magicians, I'm stealing your word, Ree, are so friendly. And that's part of the reason we do this job, is that we are approachable, we're easy to chat with, and we enjoy talking with other people. And sometimes that can be mistaken for, non-professionalism on the part of the candidate, in which they volunteer, just a little bit too much information of, oh, I'm not going to log on before 10 a.m. Like, I actually had somebody recently say that to me in an interview, and I thought, oh gosh, okay, well, that would be maybe a conversation for you and your manager about when you might want to log on to work. And then another thing that I'm finding, I find especially in certain candidates, is a lack of listening. If I can't, a lot of what we do is listening for an interview, but if I can't get a question in edgewise about who you are, and you take control of the interview, I had a candidate recently say, I said, oh, can you tell me about your experience with, end-to-end development? And they said, no, I would like to go through the job description and let you know which skills I have and do not have. And I thought, oh, you might very collaborative with other people in a team setting, and so it's hard because it is phone interviewing, especially, or even video interviewing, is a mix of talking and me, like Hebba saying, me selling you the position and you selling your skill set. So it has to be a give and take in it has to be a true conversation.
Yeah, I definitely hear all of those. Yes. And I think for me, like, some of the really glaring red flags are like, don't say inappropriate things, right? And I think if you've been a recruiter for long enough, you've probably experienced this, but this is something that seems like common sense to a lot of people, but you'd be surprised as to what we hear as recruiters. And that comes both in the interview itself and then after, right? Whether it's an email that we send you, whether it's a rejection, what have you. But it's just sometimes the inappropriate items, right? So I've had a lot of people say that they wanted to work with people that were like them. And when I asked what like them meant, it was very icky, racist vibes, like, no, sorry, we're not about that here. That kind of thing. It's like, come on, show me who you are. I want to know the real you. But there are some red flags that it's like, oh, yeah, that's not okay, right? That's not okay in any setting. Also, the red flags that I think as a lot of us as recruiters in the talent space and even in the HR space have probably experienced is, after you get a rejection letter, there's sort of a way to either not reply back and completely fine, or to reply back with a thank you. Maybe something opens up next time. The way not to do it is to send back things like F you, this and that. And we all kind of have had that. And what that does is that just like really makes us feel like you didn't value the time that we spent in the process with you either, right? Because it's time on both sides. And we're trying to make the experience the best that we can for the candidates on the recruiter side. And we've, as we all know, we've got a lot of bandwidth items, especially and we'll talk about that in a bit, I think, but especially if we're trying to do the best we can on the candidate experience side, just having that respect of time on both sides. And the throwing cuss words back and forth is never going to be helpful to anyone, right? So I would just say it's just really knowing that you're still in a conversation with someone, knowing that you're, like Cassandra said, not super comfortable with someone, but still balancing that line of showing yourself, right? Showing us your quirks and the fun things that make you you and the unique items that make you you. Those are all things that we want to see, because as recruiters, we don't want to have the same conversation 10 times a day. We want to understand what you're motivated by. We want to understand what you can bring to the table that might be different from the next person we talk to that brings something else to the table. So all of that to say that bring us your quirks, but don't go inappropriate.
Yeah, I love that. I also have dropped the F-bomb on interviews before, so I probably shouldn't, but that's just,
I feel like that's fine. If that's the vibe, cool. But like the F you after you got a rejection letter.
No, definitely wrong. Definitely wrong. We had a great question come in. What if the candidate is neurodivergent or other circumstances that make them ask or act differently? How do you balance empathy with red flags?
Love that question.
Such a brilliant question.
I was going to say, I can take that really quick. And then if Cassandra or Ree want to add, so when I'm setting up interviews, I like to ask people if there are any accommodations that they need before we go into it, right? Because I want to know. And if there are accommodations that are needed, whether that is we need to work through a system for those that are hard of hearing, we can do that. Whether there is a device that they'd like to use that makes it easier for them, we can do that. So there are a lot of accommodations that we can do. And I like to ask that as we're starting to go down the path of setting up interviews so that we know. And that way it's kind of like they feel comfortable and I know that they feel comfortable. I also want people to present their best selves. And the way to do that is to be comfortable, right? And we all know that if you're you have sort of this neurodivergence or you're not as into sort of the ableist side of candidates as much, you want to have this piece where you feel comfort and you don't want to wait until the interview to say, and oh, by the way, I have this thing, right? We want to know ahead of time. We want to just understand what makes you more comfortable, because that's going to be a better experience overall. So I always like to ask that beforehand, if there's any accommodations needed, anything that they need from me, anything I need to do differently for them. So if that's sending them ahead, I've had people ask me questions that I would ask during a phone screen. I send that ahead because some people need to process it, right? We all think in very different ways. So it really just depends on what they need, but most recruiters are very open to that.
Yeah, I would have said the exact same thing. I think the interesting thing is we've gotten a lot of questions in HR therapy this season about supporting neurodivergent candidates and employees. What I will say is, like, I think we're all also learning a lot about it too. Like, I think more and more every day there comes out like more guidance, more people who can share like what we should do. And so as an HR team and as a recruiting team, like always learning that there are things out there that we might not have experienced yet, but our goal is to always build the process for everyone. And so part of that means also learning if we have neurodivergent candidates, if we have candidates that need accommodations, and just asking, and you don't have to say like, are you neurodivergent? You can just ask like, are there any accommodations you'd like us to consider in this interview? I want to work with you to make you most comfortable to set you up for success. Adding that one line in an email would feel so different to somebody who's like, wow, now I have the power to ask for the thing I want. Versus getting to an interview and it being whatever it is, which is uncommon for like what it normally is, and then assumptions being made and there being no empathy for what the person is experiencing. Yeah.
I think there's so much ableist language and assessment criteria in a standard interview process in almost every single company. When I first, joined previous companies, looking for like enthusiasm in a candidate is like leaning toward, that's biased toward potentially people who are neurodivergent or just, introverted and, that they just, they take their time to process. I think that in terms of like I, at least as a talent acquisition person, if I think, oh, that person maybe gave me a weird vibe, I know that sounds weird, but like my gut is telling me that they might not be a good fit, or I don't know what other way, or might not be for the position. I always kind of like to pass them through the interview process and get somebody else's opinion, because I think that it's so it can't just be one person making a decision. Like we have to, look at as a company. And I know that maybe isn't always the best if there's like a biased culture at an organization, but seeking an additional opinion outside of yourself is so crucial, which is why having a diverse like hiring team is also really important, because if you have the same person hiring, like if you have an all male panel or all female panel or anything like that, it's not, or all one race panel, it's hard to then like you said, have the empathy for folks who operate differently.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And it's just interesting to think about, like, we will make up our decision. I think the number is like 60 seconds after meeting somebody, if we're going to hire them, 60 or 90 seconds. And so when I give training to our managers at Work Week about what hiring looks like, I always say, like, you have to push past those first 60 seconds. Whatever assumption you just made, you have to like remind yourself there's bias in that assumption that I just made. And if we can just educate people on understanding that, I actually think it opens up the boundaries so much more for people to be more empathetic in a recruiting process for folks that might have different experiences than us.
And I know it's
I love this. Okay.
but I sleep on it. Sometimes I'll just come back to a candidate. Like if I'm like not sure on a candidate, I'll just be like, I'm going to sleep on it and wake up tomorrow and make a decision whether I want to move. It doesn't have to be right in the moment.
Yeah. I love that. Okay. So we've chatted a bit about like what candidates are kind of seeing in the market, what we've seen, red flags in the interviews. And so I think a good next question too would be like, what are recruiters focusing on? So we're hearing all of the things that are happening in the world, the layoffs with the uptick in unemployment being low and more jobs being added and grenades being lobbed every day at recruiters. But what are the recruiters focusing on right now?
I would say, I'll jump in first here. So I would say, quite honestly, like really truthfully and honestly, I think a lot of talent teams are just focusing on surviving at the moment, right? Like just focusing on having a job, doing the best job that they can do, but having a job. I don't know about you all, but when I see the layoffs on LinkedIn, it tends to be the talent teams first, then maybe the DEI teams, then the HR teams. Do I agree with it? No, but right now I think what's on really a top of a lot of talent teams' minds are, I just am trying to keep my job, right? I'm trying to do a good job so I can have a job. And that's real, right? Like that's a real gray cloud over even just our entire industry at the moment, even HR, right? It is a real thing. And it is something that I think we just need to name and know that's there and know that it is real and truthful and where we are in the economy at the moment. Now, do I think that there can be some silver linings to the layoffs that we've seen? Yes. I mean, this is a really like quick side comment, but I'm optimistic that maybe there's so many layoffs happening so that those companies can actually pay their people fairly and transparently and, correctly. I don't know if that will happen, but I'm hopeful that it will. But the other thing is just like, it is cyclical, right? We're focusing on this as recruiters. If you've done this for a few years, you know how this goes. It's like, okay, all the recruiters are laid off. All right, cool. We're going to chill for 2 months. And then we're going to wonder where all the recruiters are because we need recruiters. So we need them now. We need them fast. And then we all see this uptick in hiring. And then 6 months later, all the recruiters are gone. It's just like this cycle that keeps happening, right? And it's surprising to me that people still get surprised by it, right? And I've been doing this for longer than a decade, and I keep seeing the same cycle happening, and I know it's coming, right? And it's just so surprising to me where people are like, "Oh, we don't need any recruiters. Oh, we need all the recruiters," and it's like, have you not been paying attention? this keeps happening. So I think right now it's focusing on keeping a job and then also just riding the wave until the next part of the cycle comes.
I love that. The plugging, I think I've been using the sinking ships, plugging holes metaphor way too often this last few weeks where I'm like,
and that's a good point, right? And it could be like, the last recruiter left and how much they have to do, right? As the last recruiter, or maybe they're the only recruiter left. Maybe there only was one recruiter.
Yeah. So I also love the idea of like, not getting rid of your recruiters, but like I hate the word, I don't want to use the word repurposing them, but like there are other projects outside of recruiting that the recruiting skill set is very relevant for. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Anything else to add, Cassandra or Ray? I'm getting excited.
That's a really good point, Hebba, because that was kind of going to be my add to the conversation, that recruiters are now focusing on their pivot, like what's next, because it may not be in recruiting. It could be in people operations. It could be someplace totally different. But I think that just even for me personally, just looking at what else can we do? Can we get into people operations? Can we get in it further into the company just to kind of protect ourselves, or just kind of build our repertoire of just knowledge to prepare for what could potentially come down the pipe. So that's what I've been seeing like my peers focus on. They're like, hey, like maybe I should get a certification in something else. Maybe I should like find another industry to focus on, but just kind of that what's next.
They always talk about the downturns in the market as when people seek more education and more advancement and go back and get master's degrees or like the other certifications and things that they can do. I'm going to be truthful about, I'm so in survival mode right now in trying to figure out where, my organization is going. But, even when I'm not in survival mode, I'm always thinking about how I can add value to my hiring managers. Almost anyone could be trained to do recruiting, and a lot of people think anyone can do recruiting. I would argue that it is a highly specialized skill set, and that not everyone probably can or should be a recruiter. But I think that we add value in so many different ways and provide that extra level of customer service and looking at the market and, giving these hiring managers and business leaders insights that probably could avoid a reduction in force down the line. As Anessa said, with the cycle, that, we can just really be those business partners. We're not just, talent acquisition. We're like consultants in this space and really can provide that leadership.
I love this. We're going to get into it in the next question. I'm just like, it's so true. Survival mode. I feel that too. Like I'm just like, oh, plugging some holes over here. And it's just like the line that you said that like everyone thinks they can be a recruiter really stuck with me, because if I had a damn dollar for every time someone was like, I could do this job, and I'd be like, you don't know anything, literally nothing. You don't know anything about this. Stop trying.
Sometimes I let them try, and then they're like, wait,
yes,
this is help. And I'm like,
this is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're like, I've hired 5 people before. And I'm like, I've hired 50,000 people before. They're like, I've hired 5, I've hired 50,000. Cool.
Let's talk about that. Yeah. It's a skill. It honestly is, I think, funny, but also very annoying for all of us that are recruiters or people ops people. I think we're like the number one job that people are like, oh, well, I think I could do that. And you're like, oh, it's a little harder than you think, like not trying to make it everything. But I think it's because like recruiters and HR people have such a versatile set of skills, which leads us beautifully into my next question. Like there are transferable skills. So what are some that recruiters could potentially use to transition to a new role?
We just provide such an extra level of like organizational and operational perspective that I think that there's I could list on forever, like consulting and planning. We're into data driven insights. We can sell things. Like I always call sales for HR. Like we are the front line of a market. We're the face of a company. Sometimes it's so many different ways in which people interact with us that I think that, maybe this is like, just like a dream, like idealistic of me, but I'm like, we could do anything. If you can be a recruiter and be a successful recruiter, you could do anything.
Yes, you can. You can. I see a lot of recruiters doing the recruiter to sales transition, which I think is like very similar skill sets. But I just got off a call today where I was telling someone about like, to be in HR, you have to have the most interdisciplinary set of skills. So like the best comparison is like salespeople just really need to sell. They do outreach, they negotiate, they close. HR does all of that within just recruiting. And then we also do internal comms. We also have to negotiate with candidates and manage hiring, manage expectations of hiring managers. And so I think if you're in HR, your toolkit is probably full of like 15 plus skills, which would work for possibly any job that doesn't require technical nature. Project management, someone said too.
Yeah, I was just about to say that if you were to take everything and make that interdisciplinary kind of like career and something that is definitely going to pay you a really lovely package, you might want to get into project management. Like project management and recruiting is apples for apples, and project managers make a lot of money. And usually it's, if you're looking to also move into leadership, it's a really great path directly into the COO seat. So I was definitely going to drive home that project management side. And then there's a lot of support, even more so than for recruiters for project management. You can get your PMP, you can go to school and get kind of like side certifications and minors in project management. So there's a lot of more like support out in the market for people who are interested in that.
I love that. Anessa, anything to add?
I would say, recruiters are really good at reading the room and reading people, right? We are really good. And as a former journalist turned recruiter, there's a lot of people that can go the other way too, right? Because what I found is that, okay, journalism, I'm asking people questions, I'm gauging their body language, I'm trying to see if they're telling me the real deal, right? And it's kind of the same as a recruiter. It's like, okay, I'm asking you questions, I'm gauging your body language, I'm trying to see if you're actually being authentic with me. And there is such this piece of so many things that we do that you all have said that can just be such amazing pieces to other parts of the business. And I realistically think that, as Cassandra and you said, Hebba, as well, and you really just, if you are a successful recruiter, sky's the limit on what you can do. Like, I think more recruiters should be CEOs. I think that more recruiters should be COOs. I think that more recruiters could be head of ops, right? Like, we could do so many things. I also think that one really small thing before we move on is that I think recruiters, like we've all said, have sort of this bad rep in that it's easy and people can do it and anyone can learn it. And for the right, personality characteristic, a couple of these pieces that you need to kind of have with your intuition to know if it's the right move or the wrong move, you can be taught that. But I also think that there's just this powerhouse consultative ability that very, very few companies, and we've worked with over 100, very, very few companies even grasp the ability of amazingness that they could get from their recruiting teams. Because if they really empowered their recruiting teams to do the most that they could do, their business could change. Almost overnight. Their revenue would pop up. Their profits would go up, right? Like, it is just, I've seen the amazingness of an empowered talent team and how game-changing that is. So there's a lot that we can do as on the talent side. And I think similar to HR, there's a lot we can do on the HR side too.
Sky's the limit. Y'all, recruiters are my heroes. We've reached the segment where we're taking live questions too. So this is like, dial your HR person. You have four people, 3 recruiters. I don't know what's words are so hard right now for me.
Numbers, words.
You can scan this and you can ask questions. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually answer all your questions. Here we go. Okay. First question. Do you see any emerging benefits that are garnering attention this year, like used to attract and retain outside of salary and bonus?
Yeah, I had a conversation about this. I had a conversation about this yesterday. Candidates are really into any benefits they have that allow them to spend more time with their family. So they're looking in, especially in the remote environment, how FMLA plays into that, because a lot of companies are not covering FMLA for remote companies. So writing policy around that. Also, in addition to that, just parental leave overall and how much time they're actually getting and what amount of your salary is covered for that, because we're coming out of a pandemic where a lot of people lost loved ones and they're realizing or having a renewed value in that family time and really looking into how companies are going to be able to support them.
I love that. Yeah, parental leave is a big one. Anessa or Cassandra, anything to add?
I was just going to say learning and development opportunities with, I've worked for employers that have had the reimbursement for cost of continuing education. But I also, one thing that's really lovely about, the current company I'm working for, NPR, we're very flexible with our hours and people love that. It just, like Ree said, with the renewed sense of I want to spend time with my family. We have a lot of working parents, and to be able to support them in that capacity is really fantastic, I think.
Someday I hope a benefit will be the 4-day work week.
Oh yeah, I hope that too.
Standard. It's not even a benefit. You just get it.
Yeah,
Standard.
Yeah.
I
really
pray for that day.
I was gonna say, I like this movement, and I think we need to get there sooner rather than later. P.S. Small plug, I'm writing a book right now, and it will be a part of the book. But is personalizing work, right? Customizing and personalizing work, because we do that for every other part of our life, our lifestyle, our health, our exercise, our food, our diet. Why do we not do it for a third of our lives, which is work? Personalizing and customizing work, and companies leaning into that now will have such an advantage.
I love that. This next question, I was hoping someone would ask this. Do you think the new developments in AI will impact the talent and recruiting world? Is this a positive or a negative in your view?
ChatGPT just came out number 4 today, right? Like this week. Oh, geez.
I have a thought on this. I will throw my thought out and I will then be silent, but I have a very hot take on this. Any AI they have proven is ends up giving you results that are sexist and racist.
Yes,
to be very clear. A great follow is the CEO of Textio. She always posts about this. They had ChatGPT write performance reviews, and the bias was unreal.
Yeah, unreal.
Without even giving any identifying features, it actually was like bias against the men and the women, how they wrote the reviews. And so my thought is like, I would hope that AI could streamline some of the things we do. However, everything I'm seeing about it in regards to people and people operations is that it actually skews and actually gives you like straight up bias results.
Well, we live in a racialized society. We cannot ignore that. And I think that what people want is an unbiased source, but there's no such thing as an unbiased source. We talk about that in scientific writing, where people, with BMI, and it's about who is funding and who is writing the science, who is funding and who is writing the code. We can't divorce those concepts. We don't live in a vacuum. Technology is not created in a vacuum. I've had virtual interviews where they ask you to submit a video. I hated it. I was not a fan of that process. I'm not a fan of this personally.
Yeah. I met a cognitive behavioral, she has a PhD, world-renowned, studies how people at work and all the things. And she herself said they asked her at Amazon several times to lead the project about recruiting AI. And every time she was like, I have read the studies. I'm the scientist on this. No, you're not going to be able to do this in a way that does not give you biased results. And they went back to her time and time again. She's like, I'm not doing this, and started her own fun society to talk about cognitive bias that comes into play when you're doing things like recruiting and people ops. So I'm a no, but I don't know.
No for now.
Yes. No for now. No for now until we figure it out. Okay. I love that someone's also asking this. What is the new standard for the virtual interview processes? How many rounds? Too many or too few? And we
have so many thoughts about this, don't we, Cassandra? We had to narrow this down at NPR. So many thoughts.
What's the magic number?
So magic number, I would say it depends on the role, depends on the level, depends on what department you're in. There's not a magic number overall. I will say though, if you're going past 3 interviews, it better be for a high level role or a technical role or something, right? Past 3 interviews, which is an hour and a half, 2 hours, past a 2-hour mark, it's got to be a high level role or very technical, right? And because of, all of the pieces, I don't even love a technical interview anymore, because ChatGPT or neurodivergence, there's a lot of reasons why we shouldn't still be doing those things. But I have a real problem with those who make people come in and spend 8 hours with someone, or here, meet this person, no, meet 5 more people, no, meet 2 more people. And it's just it drags on and it keeps going. And my thought with that is, if you have something over 2 hours, or you have something that's more than 3 or 4 interviews, stop your process. Go back and train your interviewers and your hiring manager, because that is where the breakdown is. It's not in the candidate, it's not in the talent team, and it's not in the interview process. It is on your own training and your own ability to gauge talent on the hiring manager and the interviewing team. So, sorry, that's a soapbox and a hill I will die on.
May I ask a question?
Definitely a source spot.
Anything else to add?
Yeah, I can definitely echo everything Anessa said. My current manager, love her to death. She says that if after the recruiter screen, if it's taken more than two people or two interviews to determine whether a candidate is strong enough to fulfill the role, something's wrong with the process. So can totally echo what Anessa says about that. It shouldn't be this just long, exhaustive process. It's just you're getting someone, vetting whether they're going to be successful in the current culture and whether they're going to be successful in the role, and you just move over. Everything is kind of a game of chance. You're just trying your best to reduce that risk.
Yeah, I say no more than 3 to 4. Sorry, that's like my baseline.
I'm so sorry, Hebba. I was just
No,
going to say that, as you know, sometimes it's also just about getting the hiring manager on a call and just saying, okay, what information do you feel like you didn't get to ask in that interview? And is that a realistic thing that you are going to be able to assess in another 30-minute call or another 45-minute, whatever length of call? Because if it's not, and that's something you're just going to have to roll the dice and learn on the job, like you're not going to be able to fully see someone in a work experience unless they're a temp and you're looking to hire them. And then you've already seen
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. I think we answered this question about neurodivergence. Sorry, I'm watching time and we have 4 minutes left. And I want to get to one more question and then we'll wrap up with everyone here. There always seems, and this question's perfect. There's always a power struggle between HR and talent acquisition.
I'm laughing.
They want us to win, but they tie our hands. Any suggestions? God, I'm being seen way too hard right now. Any suggestions?
I'm going to kick this one to Cassandra because yes.
I always, hear me out. I know that other people struggle with their relationships with their HR advisors. I'm not going to say
you've got a great one,
but
you've got a great one.
Have a really great HR team that I work with. But it is it's all about listening and empathy, really, like, because you think, oh, but you're trying to figure out why you think they're standing in your way, because that's so hard. Like, because I'm thinking, oh, why didn't they just send me the comps? And they're thinking, why does she keep asking for, and it's just understanding each other's motivations and where they're coming from, because otherwise you have to work together. It's not going to work.
Yeah. And you're all on the same team, right? Like you're all on the same team. Same team.
Yeah. I feel like I'm fighting hiring managers more than I'm fighting anybody else most days.
It's the hiring managers. But one thing that I found is, once again, that partnership, that consultation that we provide them, and then just a better understanding of what recruiters do. Like, we don't just sit on the phone all day and then ask the same set of questions. Like, we do so much more than that. So I think just more transparency into what we do on a daily basis has helped building my relationships with the hiring managers.
I love that. You all have shared so many good tips today. I'm honored that you all came to my session and agreed to share all of these with people, but we're rounding the end of it, which is bittersweet for me because this is the season finale of our season 2. Lots of great questions were asked. I hope I get to them in my newsletter and future sessions of HR therapy. I just want to wrap up quickly with the what's next with 60 seconds left. Grab your phone, scan this QR code, or click the link in the thing. There's a survey I would love all of you to take. If you want to get on the early bird list for any additional things that we're doing through I Hate It Here, please let me know by taking that survey. And then what's next? This is the conclusion of season 2. There might be a season 3. There might be a pivot in the event series. We will see, but you won't know unless you give me your email in that survey. So politely asking. Some quick final takeaways. I think we've shared a lot of great context. We all please connect with Anessa, Ree, and Cassandra on LinkedIn. They're great people to follow. They're all wonderful and they have lots of things to say. And I think we're all kind of experiencing the struggle that is the talent world right now. And so this feels silly to say, but just remember to be kind to people, because you don't know who's going to lead you to your next opportunity, and you don't know who really needs your help. And while we can't overextend ourselves always for everybody, I do think there's a part of this where we can all try to be nicer to each other, because a lot of people are dealing with life-changing events right now. But thank you to the recruiters who are very often the unsung heroes of companies, who are treated terribly by hiring managers and executives, but you all bring us the great talent every day. And so big shout out to all the recruiters that are here too. I see how hard all of you are working, and I know you get shed on a lot on LinkedIn, and I don't appreciate it. So I'm always here for you if you need me. And I have to say thank you to my sponsors, the Predictive Index and Newsstand. I could not do this without them. And I'm so glad that they let me have a season 2 of the show and I didn't get canceled. So with that, thank you again, Anessa, Rhea, and Cassandra. Be sure to reach out to them on LinkedIn, connect with me, subscribe to the newsletter, come to HR Therapy. I'm so glad all of you are here, and I appreciate you all so, so much. Everyone have a killer day. Yeah. And go yell at a hiring manager. Go tell a hiring manager they're wrong today. That's my one.
Love it. Go yell at a hiring manager. Yeah.
Happy March Madness. I love someone just said that. Y'all are the best.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye all.